Welcome to Carolina Sculpture Studio. My name's Clint Button, and I'm a granite sculptor. And welcome to video number 150 of the Virtual Stone Carving Apprenticeship. Well, it's hard to figure. It's been 150 videos. But got a lot of content, pretty excited. So, but you can see I've got this feather, generally roughed in. I need to take this off, but this is not a big deal. It's good tired work. Now I've got to start working on her anatomy here, some of her body. And remember, we're stretching this an inch. Okay, this bottom part is where we're going to really try to put the bulk of that inch is in her legs. Okay, so this is the point on her knee. On top of her knee, and her knee would be, well, down in this area here, as this, either there to there. And so probably what we're going to do is we're going to try to drop the knee just a little bit. We'll put a little bit of this extra length in her thigh. We'll have to pretty much make just a determination as to where the bone is, the femur in her leg, up top here, where this leg is, what bone is. Go down here. And then as we put this together, we've got a certain amount of depth, and you barely see it on the camera here. Usually you'll have, when you shoot this figure, because her leg is tipped here, her shin bone, I don't know, tibia, I don't know what this is called, shin bone. This is tipped here. And the drapery will go and pull around behind basically her heel and her Achilles tendon, okay, around the back. And so this is going to be the deep part. This is always where you have to go really deep, is right here. And that foot, you don't really see it because that foot is tipped. If you've got a full round statue, you'll see the bottom. You have to see the bottom of that foot. But you don't see the top of it. It's all hidden back there. This other leg that's bearing her weight is over here. This goes down, and this is what's bearing her weight, and her foot we'll see her tips of her toes over here on this side, which it's hard to see. But they'll be just beside this detail. This is the detail on the die. If you can see over here. Hard to get the camera back and have it close enough and have everything where you can see it. The detail of the die is over here. This is still extra material to come off. So, as I've said, she's going to look misshapen, weird. We got a whole lot going up here, and then she's really narrow here. Well, we're going to widen her up by, 3 inches, 4 inches there, to where her foot's going to be over here with some drapery just to the side of this. And so we've still got all this room. We want to have some depth so that it looks like this comes out, this is in, this is where your weight is bearing, and then it tips for her shin to be, her shin is going to be about the same length as mine, but her foot is tipped. It isn't flat-footed. She's up on, the toe of the ball, the top of the front of her foot, where she's just, sort of up on her toes. So that's going to raise this. So we've got to figure where that line intersects here and here, and it's a judgment call to a certain extent. The way we're going to show that is by how the drapery crosses and lays on top of and defines the shape that's underneath. Okay? So in order to have the folds here, they have to traverse underneath her knee across the front of her shin, and then they have to justify with material up here. And with this deep hole here that's deeper than what I wanted to do, we'll probably work this back a little bit, and this edge, there'll be an edge right here because we've got one fold here. This edge will probably be the one that is really obvious, that goes across and then down there, and so we have to work this in just to make it look good. And we could point it really hard, but the problem is we added an inch in here, so we got to pick that inch up. So this will be direct carve, and I'll just try to take some video as I do it, and we'll just make her look good, because that's the whole point. Most of the time when you carve anything, except unless you've got a real specific project that you're pointing, you're just going to have to learn to eyeball it and carve it anyways. And these icons, that's why we do a lot of the drapery in the same way, because it makes sense, and you can look at it, and when you see it in the cemetery and there's a bunch of other figures in drapery, the drapery should all pretty much be the same and not be real erratic. There are some drapery that's very faceted, that's more typical of old marble work. You don't see that on granite as much, but it's just a different motif. But I'm gonna work on this and just start laying this out, and then I'll try to get what I can for the video. So let's get carving. As I'm moving forward, I want to show you what's being accomplished. Okay, this flat in here at the bottom, okay, there's a point right there, there's a point right there, another one right up here, and another one higher up. Those points correlate to this fold. That point, that point, that point. See how this is a high, and this is all low, okay? See the difference? Over here, this is still like probably 1.5 inches tall. This is all gonna go back and sink way in. That's gonna articulate that leg way, 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 way out. And we'll be in, it'll look a lot different. But remember, these points were shot and they're about 1 inch high. You know, they're 1 inch this way because we're going to lower it. So down here, this is approximately where this is going to end. This one, just say it's 3/4 of an inch, so it's going to be sort of in here. We're going to just slowly pull these down a little bit because we tried to add this from about her knee, or right around her knee. We tried to add that extra inch in this lower part, okay? And I wanted to show you, it wouldn't be uncommon for me to have part of her foot right here, her back foot. Her foot, see, this is what we marked as the center line for the figure, okay? And this center line will go down, and this foot, which there'll be toes right here, that foot will be the center line, that leg. That's where her weight is. Okay, let's back up. See, because right here, this foot is your center line of a figure, going right up through, okay? This is what I was talking about with her back foot. See, she's got one foot here that's towards the front. This other foot's way in the back. Now, because this is a relief, let me turn this camera around, I'll hang it up here. Be right back. Because this figure is in relief, this foot down here, where I showed you, see if I can get in a good spot. If this foot was exposed, it would be truncated quite a bit. We'd have to foreshorten it a lot. And she's so close to full round that I decided to just sort of hide it behind all this drapery, okay? And so that foot is back there, but I'm trying to blend it and make it look as good. When you carve these in general, what happens is you'll have, that back foot turns into a flipper. It's hard to get enough dimension on it in a foreshortened capacity to make it look like a full round foot. And if we cut this really deep in order to make that foot look good, we'd be so deep in the stone, it would make her look like she was trapped in the stone, because this would be way further back than up here. And we're trying to balance this out so that she looks like she's in front of the stone. She's not embedded in the stone. And so that foot can't really go behind these feathers very much. It has to stay in this area. And it just would look, because that foot would have to be here and this foot would probably be pushed back a little bit more. And so you've got to be careful about how you, I don't know how you cheat it, and I don't know how else to put it. This comes from experience. You'll do a lot of stones, you'll do a lot of different jobs, and some of them look really great, and then some of them look like they just got kind of a flipper back there, or a paddle, or a hand looks weird. The goal is to make her look like she's in front of the stone. And so you sort of have to bend details on occasion in order to not call attention to them, because that in doing and calling attention to her, defining that detail, that can make the rest of the job look really bad. And so if her drapery covers up that back foot, it's going to probably help this job. So wait and see. I think you'll like it better. But at this point, I'm working this back. I'm sinking right here. See, I've already tipped this, and let's push this back. I'm going to push all that back. That's going to bring all of this detail way to the front. We still got a lot of extra volume right here that we need to trim off, because her thigh doesn't bulge like that. And from this knee up to this hip, if we draw a straight line, this is pretty, it's got a nice swell to it, but it's not anywhere as near as big as this, okay? So but I want to blend all this so that this drapery is tight against her leg as she's moving forward. Back to cut. As I'm working this back, you gotta understand this, the focal point of this composition, okay, from her waist down, what you're going to notice is there's going to be, okay, when you talk about design, okay, repetition repeats, whatever, echoes. When you repeat something over and over again, or you've got multiples, that strengthens, that enhances the design, because it helps people understand what they're looking at without thinking about it, okay? So we've got in this lower half, and when you have things that are approximately parallel or in phase with each other, it also simplifies how your mind processes what it's seeing, because it can recognize one aspect of it and see that that aspect is replicated again and again and again and again, and it makes sense. When you look at leaves on the ground, looking out, you see leaves on the ground. I know what one leaf is, and I don't have to look at every single thing that kind of looks like a leaf to understand that it's probably a leaf. You see there's a whole mess of leaves that ought to be raked up. Okay, same thing here. In the lower half of this composition, we have some dominant elements, okay? We have these big, long, sweeping curves, okay? This big, long fold right here. And this is a major focal point, okay? We've got this one, and we've got another one, and that'll go across her shin, okay? And they're going to be very easy to understand and very easy to see. So this is really critical. I've got to make sure when I carve this that it flows in regard, or it hangs in proper relationship to gravity. Okay, it shouldn't hump in and out and go like this. It should have this nice smooth curve that goes down and then flares out by her foot down here. Okay, because it's supposed to be pushed forward a little bit by her foot, by her left foot. Then we've got another one across here that goes to it. And this has to have that same nice smooth fall, okay, because they're pendant and they're formed by the tension here at her feet of her moving forward, and by gravity working upon the fabric, the pull of gravity. Okay. At the same time, we have other folds like these on the side that are relevant to gravity. Okay, gravity's, they're just hanging down. They're not really moving a lot in terms of the way she's moving. But in contrast to those, we've got a few folds that go across the top of her leg that's moving forward. That's tipped, because we got to sink this in here some, raise this up. We're going to sink this a little bit and make it look like this knee is pushing forward. Okay, and so those are a symmetrical detail. Okay, you could have symmetrical composition with asymmetrical detail, and where we've got symmetry in these designs, where we've got a couple of folds that are hanging, we've got a couple of folds that are in tension, where they're being shaped, created, and acted upon by this leg moving. And so we want to make sure that these look great and that these look great, and then in doing that, they're going to frame her knee that's thrusting forward. Does that make sense? So I'm starting, just like I talked about with the floral work. Okay, remember, how do I do flowers? How do I do stuff like that? How do I do agreements? I start at the outside and work my way in. Because if I'm careful about it and I don't waste off too much material getting to this detail, I'm going to have a lot tighter composition. I'm not going to start with her knee and then all of these folds are just kind of flopping out here in the breeze and they don't make any sense. It looks like they're fake. Okay, and you'll see carvings that look like that. They don't look as realistic because they don't have the tension, because everything's spread out too much. They're not in the proper arrangement, proper spatial agreement. And so that's what we're going to do here. I'm going to work on this. I'm going to start this boss, this amount of stone here is going to carry over to this point here. I'm going to start working that down to try to get that line in shape as well, and I'll tune these up. Another big detail is that I'm working like this. And as I work like this is why this edge is not cut back to here where I'd have lots of room, no problem. You know, I would have plenty of clearance. I've got 1, 2, I think that's it. I've got 1, 2 right there that are just little bumps where this is hit that and caused a small chip. Okay, that's a big reason why we don't cut this back to this line right now, because if we do, we're going to have to deal with keeping this edge perfectly pristine. You know, I forget about the fact that we're going to push it back an inch because we got to fix it on the bottom. So this is all going back an inch anyway. It's going to bring her even more forward. But having this sacrificial edge on here as a buffer or an insurance makes a lot of sense, because when you're working in here, you're going along, you will have little bumps, whether you bump with the machine, whether you lift off and you accidentally hit going in, you're going to have some little, you know, I got a couple things from the saw that aren't just perfect. It's easier to have that and then cut it off later. You know, if you can't, bevel it. I'd bevel this. But where this is going to go back an inch, literally this is going to go back almost that much. And I'd kind of like to leave this on here for a while so I can push this face back and have this as a register. So I can lay my straight edge across and I'll just saw this in and push this all back and get it pretty close. I mean, that's what I'd like to do. We'll see how it happens. All right, back to carving. Made some progress. It's important to understand, well, I'm doing the same thing that I do. I'm going to see if I can point, if this will work. I'm putting together these folds. Okay, this fold, this one here, I had some, you know, good points that I shot here, and then more down here, another one, and this has to drop really. This is going to flatten out, and then this one, I've already started dropping. It's got to go down to about right there in order to gain that inch that we added. but I'm working that fold, and then this one is not back as far as it needs to be yet. It's only back about the same distance on the model, and it's got to go back even further. So I could push that back a little bit more. What I'm doing is I'm developing these primary lines like I was talking about, okay? I'm working those. At the same time, I'm developing this line over here because this outer edge right here is going to define her. And so I've taken this off. This is widened the wing, taken this off, and now I'm working on this curve. I've got to smooth this up. This is where we're going. I got to take this down and develop this, and I'll put this together. And like I talk about with the floor work, I want her knee to be well defined and trapped and being where it's expressing the fabric. It's pushing the fabric and moving the fabric. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to develop this outer line and this line. I'm going to develop it towards her knee, okay? That's why this is still misshapen and this is still over some. I'm going to work this together to squeeze this to make her knee come forward. And then I can carve all of the drapery up tight to her anatomy so it'll make it look better, okay? And because right now, you know, this stuff here on the bottom's coming pretty well. I'm going to work on tuning this outer line, and I'll work on this fold, and then I'll work on this fold because this one fades down into behind her calf, okay? So it's all coming. Just got to keep working, and it's, you know, move it along. It doesn't always work to get video of everything, but this is coming pretty well. So I'm going to work on getting this top tuned to try to get a nice flow for this piece of drapery here. Probably sink this just a little bit and then sink that top, and it'll help lift that up. All right, back to carving. Yeah, I've worked this side fold back here quite a bit, and I want to hang the camera up and show you. But before I do, see these points? I'm almost completely flush, and there's a little bit cut there. But look at where they are on here. These points are all on this outer edge of this fold, so it still has to go in 50% more than that, okay? And this top point right here, there's still, at least 2 inches there, so that's going to go up at least 3 inches over here on the stone. So it's going to go up into this area in here. So we got to keep that in mind. But I want to hang this up and show you, but this is why you shoot your points. You trust you may screw up, because you will. I mean, I've got, you know, a couple points on this that I'm not real happy about that I got fixed, and I'll do what I can with it. But you've got to shoot your points and understand where they are and how to approach them. Okay, so let me hang the camera up, see if I can get it in a good spot here so I can explain some of how I did this. All right. It's really these lessons, you know, that I've been trying to teach you and demonstrate. This is when they really start to matter. Okay. The obvious, easy thing that people will do is they'll take a regular chisel, round or straight, and they'll go in here and they'll cut this line. They'll cut that to create that fold, okay? I get it. That's the obvious way to do it. The problem with doing that, and remember how the grain, this is head grain, okay? We're looking at head grain, so the grain's running up and down here. The problem with doing that line, that stone comes off really easy, okay? And if we put a stress riser in here, by cutting this line definitively with this chisel, we're setting ourselves up for problems later. This is, it's hard to learn. It takes a long time. And this is part of the problem with the CNC stuff, where everybody thinks, oh, just put it in the machine and the machine will cut everything out. And all I gotta do is go back to the end and scrape a little bit off, okay? Same issue applies that I'm gonna explain here by doing it by hand, is doing it with the machine. Because these points, they're not on the front of the flat of that fold, where this fold comes down and then does a transition, and then it produces basically a sign, because, you know, sign, it's an S, okay? This is going to curve and go down here, and then go down in here. It'll go all the way to the background. It'll go all the way to this. So we're still going to take a lot off right here to pull that down, and then it goes in quite a bit. What's going to happen is that I put those points on the transition, you know, just like if this is a curve, I tried to put them right at the highest point where I could put them without being on the top, on the side. I tried to stay around the corner just a little bit from the top. So the actual face of this curve is going to be this flat area between the point and the mass right now, okay? Which means I'm going to take this away. Then we're going to have to cut this, because all of that is concave. This is still convex. There's still a lot of material here to take off. But I don't want to take it off yet, because right now, while I'm tuning this all up, this extra material on the side where it kicks out, instead of curving in, this extra material here, if I go, right now, this edge looks like this. It kicks out, okay? As opposed to being like this and curving in, okay? And whether you can really see that, but I think you can. That's what this is going to end up being. So we're going to have to undercut this edge. And if we have put a stress riser in here by checking a line, once we say you check a line, you know, that's what you're doing. You're running that chisel and you're putting that line in there. You check that line and you're going to induce stress there, and it's going to create a weak spot across here. If that stress riser may be back in here when you check that line. And when you start doing this, you're apt to have a whole bunch of that entire edge just fall right off. You'll be going along and doing just great, and all of a sudden you'll see that little puff, a little bit of dust pop up. You're screwed, buddy. You just wrecked it. And so that whole fold has to come off, because you're going to have to push it back or in order to capture it, because you're going to have a big void here that's a real failure. So what I did instead, the vast majority, and you can do it with a two blade. If you don't have a two blade, you can do it with a scraper or a straight chisel. Either one, they're fine. You've got to be more careful, because every hammer hit goes into that one edge instead of these three edges or these five edges. Okay, but you can do it just fine with a regular chisel. It's a lot like axing. But all of this was done by putting the tool in here and going like this. I didn't cut this nice straight line. I rotated, I worked the stone away using the corner of my tool to just lower it, and I just went back and forth, and I created that line. Okay, so that line, there's no stress imparted in that line at all. And so now, before I did that, I tipped this edge. Remember, we tip an edge and we cut up to it. Okay, we don't cut the edge nice and straight. We tip it, we bevel, and then we cut to it. And so I tipped these, and I pushed this back, and I tipped it, and I pushed it back. And I didn't use the 9-point as much, because I didn't want to induce any undue stress here and create little soft spots that could fail and fall out later, because they will. So, going to tune this edge up. I got a little bit more to go to push it in. I'm going to bevel it. I want to get this really, really nice, so it sights really great, and try to get, like, there's a little bit of evacuation right there above that point. These others are just about perfect, a little bit right there. and I'll try to blend this down to the background down here. And I've got to tweak that because we stretched this an inch. That's why we didn't shoot any points down here, because I wanted to do them more by eye than to do them directly off the model, because if I shot a point deep here and that deep point needed to be an inch lower, then I can't catch up with that material. I want to just blend into it. So we'll blend this up. This has to come down and capture down around here where her thigh, where her calf tips back in, okay? So by leaving this material, by producing it, by going this way, scraping it back and forth to lower it, instead of putting a chisel on it and actively cutting it, I've kept all my strength in this fold, so that when later on, when I go back and I undercut it, I've got to push this in, because like right in here on her leg, this goes in. This is probably going to go in at least an inch from wherever, from this fold, and this fold, the outer edge should be right where these dots are. So I've still got to tune that back a little bit more, and then I got to push this in deeper to get that nice scoop. But before I do all that, I'll get this one tuned up, and then I'll put this fold together to get this to blend and flow really well. And then we've got to work on these couple up here, which you got to play with them a little bit, because I think I went too deep right here. So those are things to be careful about. And you're going to make mistakes. You're going to do this. You're going to be buzzing away, and all of a sudden you have a big old chunk just blow right off, and you're going to have to fix it. Okay. So learn not to make that mistake in the first place, right? Back to work. All right, it looks like this video needs to wrap up, so we'll go ahead and break it off. Man, it's nice to be carving, and it's even better to be swinging compasses, shoot these points, then you start carving them, and they all come together really well. Like I said, every point won't. You'll probably make some mistakes, especially in the beginning, even after you've done it a long time. And this is where I don't have the ability to go around behind. Some of these points were pretty challenging to shoot, so some of them are more accurate than others, but there's no disasters that we can't fix. So we'll keep working on them in the next video. Push this line down and make that look so much different. It's just going to bring this together in a lot of ways. So my name's Clint Button. I'm a granite sculptor here at Carolina Sculpture Studio with the Virtual Stone Carving Apprenticeship. Thanks for coming in.